Hi, welcome to the Season of Streaming 2021, Roku's latest report produced in collaboration with the Harris Poll. I'm your moderator, Deirdre McGlashan, the Chief Media Officer here at Stagwell. And today we'll be exploring how consumers plan to stream, research, and buy during the busiest shopping season. I've been joined by an esteemed panel of industry executives, and we'd love to give them a moment just to introduce themselves. Dallas, why don't we start with you?
So happy to be here with everybody this morning. My name is Dallas Lawrence. I run communications for the Roku platform business. Roku is America's largest streaming platform, reaching more than 55 million households in the United States. And we're really thrilled to be here with you today.
Great. And Connie?
I'm Connie. I am a director at the Harris Poll. And as the name suggests, the Harris Poll, we're known for our polls and thought leadership, like the one we're discussing today, but really we are a research and strategy consultancy. So our role is to identify those key insights and apply them to business, marketing, and brand strategy. I'm super excited to be here today.
Great, thanks. And Toby.
Thanks, Deirdre. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me along. My name's Toby Southgate. I'm the global CEO of Forsman and Bodenfors, which is a Swedish-led global creative collective working around the world with clients like Volvo, H&M, P&G, Häagen-Dazs, and Goldman Sachs. Great to be here today and talking about my favorite time of the year, the holiday season.
Fantastic. Thank you all for joining so much. We're going to start by presenting the findings of the Season of Streaming 2021, and then we're going to have a moderated discussion. Unfortunately, there won't be time for a Q&A. However, if you have questions along the way, please do throw them in the chat and we'll get the answers to you after the session. So to set the scene before we start, the annual holiday consumer shopping study conducted by Roku in partnership with Harris Poll is now in its 4th year. And it offers marketers insights into shifting consumer shopping preferences, spending priorities, and media consumption habits. The survey has signaled emerging trends and followed others as they've moved from emerging to mainstream, and we are extremely excited to have Dallas here to present the report this year. Dallas, over to you. I think you have some slides to share.
I do. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to get into this and thrilled again, as I said, to be here with everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully with a thumbs up, someone will show me that you're able to see our presentation. Excellent. So, I love this time of year for a couple reasons. When I go back in my time, both formerly working for a large retail company, but also my agency days, right around this time of year, every brand is asking the same question in the C-suite, and that is, are the holidays going to happen this year? Are shoppers going to turn out? Are we going to have that moment that's going to make our year? And that's a key reason why we do this survey. What we're going to talk about is really 3 key things today. Consumer sentiment, what's happening in the market, how are people feeling this holiday season? The second key question, when, where, and how much are they going to spend this holiday season? And then a really key thing for us that we look at Roku, being that we're the largest streaming platform in the United States, we work with most of the top 200 advertisers, 90% of the top 200 advertisers, is really that changing path to purchase and how brands and marketers need to think differently about this holiday season than really any other holiday season that we've ever seen before. Just a quick recap on who we're talking about today. It is the holiday shopper. This is a great sampling of the United States consumer in partnership with Harris. It's the 4th year I've worked with Harris on this, so I'm excited that we both have some longitudinal data, but also great cuts at different groups across the spectrum, both from demographics, age, ethnicity, income. So if you don't see something that if it's not your target demographic you're looking for here, I would say reach out to us on this call and we can cut the data for you anyway and pull some very interesting insights. So with that, let's get to consumer sentiment. The good news this year, 7 in 10 shoppers are confident the economy will improve in the next 12 months. That confidence is going to really surge holiday shopping. We expect to see 86% of shoppers planning to spend the same or more. What is really key about this year is more than a third, 36% plan to spend more. That's the biggest number we've seen in 3 years. We have to go back to 2018 to see that much confidence and that much excitement in the holiday shopping season. So what are they going to spend? We anticipate they're going to spend $938. That's about a 5% increase, 5.5% increase. This is right in line with some of the other data we've seen from some credit card companies. For example, MasterCard did a survey of businesses that expect holiday shopping to increase about 7%. What's really interesting this year, and we're looking at this survey for COVID trends, what are things that are going to change this holiday season because of the COVID environment? And one of the big changes we're seeing are the things people plan to buy. For the first time, home and household goods are a top 3 purchase consideration item. And that's being driven by the fact that folks say they're working from home, they have friends working from home, and they want to buy a gift to make that working from home experience even better this holiday season. So some really good insights and opportunities there for those home goods, home shopping brands out there to lean in this holiday season. All right, who's getting the best gifts this year? This is who we're going to spend on. What I love about this one is for the first time, pets are going to get more than coworkers. And I think that's probably because for many of us for the last year, our pets have been our coworkers. So we're going to lean in with our pets and give them something nice this holiday season. You know, moms clearly in the household and in parent households are going to be the major purchase decider. I love some of the fun facts this year. Men are feeling very generous, mainly for themselves this year. Men plan to spend twice as much on themselves as women plan to spend on themselves. Good news, though, for the spouses of the men out there, men also plan to spend twice as much on their spouse as women plan to spend on their spouse. So that's a target demographic that's going to be spending a lot this holiday season. You see a call out for millennials here. We're going to talk a lot about millennials today. They are really emerging as a key demographic, obviously the nation's largest age demographic. They're going to spend over $1 trillion total this year, not in just the holiday, but their purchase intent, purchase power throughout the year. And they are the single largest holiday shopper in terms of those who plan to spend more. So they're very aggressive. They plan to spend a lot, not just on themselves, but on others as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that's the upfront on the landscape. I said we were going to go quick to give you a sense for what folks plan to spend and what's driving that. Now let's dig in a little bit on how they're going to spend that and when and where. So what we're seeing here, obviously, is that shopping is starting earlier and earlier every year. 1 in 5 people, shoppers started shopping before the Labor Day holiday. 1 in 4 parents. And what's driving that early parent shopping? I'm sure anybody on this who's watching this has had this experience in the last few months with COVID shortages, stock not being in, shipping delays. There's a real concern this holiday that you need to get those must-get items in the bag and done well in advance to avoid any concern. And that's what's driving 1 in 4 parents to have begun their shopping in August. Digging in, great news for retailers. We're seeing a return to the store. 64% of shoppers plan to go in the store this holiday season. That's an 11% increase from last year. So last year we saw the single lowest percent of shoppers plan to go in the store, obviously because we were at the peak of COVID and there was concern about that. This year we're normalizing a little bit. However, digital and online is still going to be dominant. That march is not changing and doesn't show any sign of turning around. We are normalizing that back a little bit to the trend line we've seen over the last couple of years, but more than half of all shopping will be done online. Gen Z, a little call out for Gen Z. We don't talk a whole lot about Gen Z here. They're just starting to emerge. That's the 24 and under demographic. But what's interesting about this group, and it's one to watch for marketers and brands, is they're acting in significantly different ways and even their millennial cohort that's right next door to them. So we see that almost 2/3 of them plan to do most of their holiday shopping online. A quick shout out for something to watch. We've been asking this question for the last 3 years about intent to make a purchase via a voice activated device in your household. And while it's still a small number, it's been growing off a pretty large compounded growth rate every year. It was 3%, then 4%. And now this year it's 5% of shoppers plan to make some sort of purchase, 5% of the purchases via a voice activated device. 1 in $10 spent by a millennial will be spent on a voice activated device. So really starting to think about what is your voice strategy going forward is going to be important for this group. I love this data. Daytime is the new prime time for shopping. Here's what we're finding is you're trying to think about, if you think historically, we look back at the data, the prime shopping time for online shopping used to be 7 to 10 p.m. at night. Now it is right in the middle of the day because we're all working from home and we can shop whenever we want. So most shopping will happen in the middle of the traditional workday. For millennials, they do almost most of their shopping, about half their shopping in a 2-hour window. What we find very interesting for marketers trying to connect and reach that consumer at that inflection point is that's also when people are streaming. Most of the streaming is done no longer in that prime time window, but during that middle of the day. So what you see is 41% report that they regularly shop while streaming. That is fundamentally changing the purchase funnel from the TV being one of those kind of large branding mediums. It was simply about brand awareness to really being a performance funnel where you could reach a consumer and convert them in that moment when they're on the couch watching that amazing ad that you've done on the biggest screen in the house. So that brings us to the changing path to purchase, our last section. Then we'll jump into the roundtable and Q&A. Really, cord cutting trends have accelerated this year, and that's a key thing for all marketers to be thinking about. We really saw COVID as really an accelerant of a secular shift that was already underway, and these numbers show that if you look at the last 4 years, the percent of shoppers who are cord cutters. The aha moment here is that 1 in 3 shoppers in America today will not watch a single commercial you're going to put on linear television. Because they don't have a connection to it. So making sure that your media budgets are now following the eyeballs and that we're buying TV the way that our consumers are watching TV is really becoming an important metric. 86% today of consumers or streamers. We use so many big numbers that it's hard sometimes to put them into context. So I love the following 2 data points. Only 68% of households have a dishwasher and 85% have a washing machine. So we really are talking about streaming becoming mainstream today. It is the way in which people are watching TV and way in which they have a great way to engage with brands on that big screen. So let's talk about time spent. This was a real tipping point last year. For the first time in the Harris Poll data survey, we found that in 2020, consumers self-reported spending more time streaming than watching traditional television. That delta grew 5x year over year. They now spend 78 more minutes watching streaming than do watching traditional linear television. Really a key. So even those who have cable are watching less and less of it, or that traditional television, turning to streaming to watch on demand, taking control of when, where, and how they watch their television. 56% of millennial shoppers watch free ad-supported TV. The reason why I share this number is a lot of brands say, well, yes, I know they're streaming, but they're only watching Netflix or they're only watching Disney Plus. And that's just not the case. There's an enormous amount of time spent watching ad-supported TV. For us at Roku, we have the Roku channel, one of the top ad-supported channels, number 6 most streamed channel, according to Nielsen by household reach. But the point here is that there are a lot of consumers who want that ad-supported content because free is the best and most favorite word in streaming. It's still the most searched for thing on the Roku platform. So it's a great opportunity to be thinking about how you engage those consumers. And then we'll wrap up here with 2 more slides. TV really has become full funnel. It's what I mentioned before. It's really becoming that moment where you can grab the consumer and make them convert to a purchase. That's why we're starting to see search and social budgets move into streaming. But what was really interesting this year is that TV ads overtook online reviews just by a hair, but they overtook online reviews just by a hair as being more prominent and more impactful for purchase decisions. And really what's driving that is trust. We're in a trust gap. I know that Stagwell and the Harris folks have talked about this quite a bit. People don't trust anonymous reviews. They trust their friends and family, and they trust the TV ad because there's a logo and brand behind it. They know who's driving that advertisement. So it really is a great opportunity to engage. Last slide on my all-time favorite statistic. This is the one everyone should write down, take their pencil and make a note of it. We started asking this question 3 years ago on a total whim. I remember we were on a conference call throwing out crazy questions that we were just randomly curious. And we said, let's ask if people pause an ad, if they see an ad that was so compelling, they loved it so much, they had to pause that ad and immediately go shop for the product. I believe it was about 18% of consumers did this 3 years ago. It then became about 30%. This year, 1 in 2 American shoppers report that they've paused an ad and gone to shop for that product. They've been so compelled, they wanted to go learn more about it, they wanted to shop. 71% of millennials have done that. So that really gives you a sense, again, for that changing path to purchase and how we need to think differently about our ads. I'll end on this last stat because it's a fun one. I know we're going to talk about a little bit more today. And how it really speaks to how do you change your ad strategy. 1/3 of shoppers have engaged with interactive ads. And what the point of this is, we need to think about going beyond that 15 or 30-second ad experience that traditionally we've lived with in television, and think differently about how do we give them a QR code? How do we get them to take an action right now? How do we engage them in a way that's different and really true to the streaming experience? So with that, I will turn it over. That is, in a nutshell, in 8.5 minutes, our 2021 streaming holiday survey.
Thank you so much, Dallas. That was amazing. Those are really interesting facts that I can't wait till we get into the conversation. But before we dig in, I'd love to hear from you, Connie, on your thoughts on the research, especially in the context of the broader themes the Harris Poll is seeing across the research on consumers right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, across the board, it's right in line with everything else that we found. I was really excited to work on this year with Dallas, an amazing presentation. Thank you for that. I actually focused in this space close to, now it's been 10 years ago. So focused on TV viewership, understanding how and what people watch in that intersection between that and how and what they buy. And back then, there was still a lot of debate on the impact of streaming, and today, no longer. Now we really see that impact. We know that we, as consumers, we have fundamentally changed. We've fundamentally changed our lifestyles, and our viewing and shopping habits have fundamentally changed. One study, actually, Dallas mentioned the Gen Zers, and we did do a recent study that said that Gen Z actually, they find their digital lives to be more memorable and more important than their in-person lives. So what that means is Gen Z, they're more likely to remember the last website they visited over their partner's birthday or even their own social security numbers. So what this really shows us is that we have just completely changed fundamentally our habits, how we experience our lives. And when we bring it back to streaming, Gen Z as well, they're really leading the pack when it comes to cord cutting. And so they are actually closer to about 45%. So those folks you can't reach through linear TV at all.
That's fascinating, Connie. Thank you so much. I think the thing that struck me the most in this study was the line, "The holidays are no longer a marketing moment. They've expanded into business strategy." I find that really interesting. I mean, I find the holiday season a fascinating time of year. It feels like it's the culmination of the year added with hopes for the next year. We saw a lot of that with brands last year participating in charitable donations and really encouraging a more caring society going into this year. So it's so interesting to think about how this high impact time of year that brands use to connect with consumers and really reach their hearts is also a driving force for delivering business results. Do you think brands are making the most of this opportunity? Dallas, what are you seeing on Roku?
I think we're seeing a couple things. I think this is a real renaissance time period for both ad creative and the storytelling that we're seeing, that we've really unlocked a creative genius and allowed you to shift and think differently about how you engage. If you think historically and just kind of look back, 100 years, the first radio ads were just print ads that were then read on the radio. The first TV ads were just those radio ads with an overlay with an image. And the first streaming ads were really just a TV ad squeezed into streaming. Now what brands are stepping back and saying is, I can have a totally different conversation with my consumer. I can target right to a household that has, that's interested in shopping for a new car or looking for a new television because we know the data. Or I can look at a household that maybe has certain different demographic mixes that make it more compelling for my brand. And I can tell a story that's more relevant and more real to them. And if there's anything we want this holiday season, it's that relevance and real and to feel like we matter as consumers. We are seeing that. We're seeing that brands think differently and realize that they need different strategies for those mediums and to lean in this holiday season. We're also seeing that they've embraced the holidays happening earlier. I know we all get frustrated when we walk into the big box retailer and there's a Christmas tree in September and ornaments for sale. But the reason that's there is because people are already shopping. So we're certainly seeing that on our platform as well.
That's awesome. And Toby, how about you? Have you seen a shift in how clients treat the holiday season?
I think there are a few things, and I love the couple of the points that Dallas and Connie have made already. The overarching thought for me is that, this will always be the case, whether it's holiday season or not. Bad ads don't help brands do great marketing, whereas great advertising can support and actually should drive great marketing. And everything that we saw in Dallas's data and Connie's commentary is really about making sure that we're not thinking tactically about what do brands do for the holidays, but we're thinking very strategically with a long-term view about what brands do throughout the year and at the holiday season. And that gives us the best chance to reflect some of these trends and dynamics that the research has picked up. The other overarching one, by the way, and I am definitely hearing it from clients, across the board, across categories, and even in some surprising places, it is really this sense of optimism. It's been a tough couple of years for everyone, for brands, for businesses, for consumers, for shoppers. I think that definitely reflects in that category analysis that Dallas picked up. People are wanting to spend on their home environments. We're spending more time here. It's become, there's no such thing as the third place anymore, because my third place, quite clearly is my kids' playroom now. And the things that we will do to make this environment a little more comfortable for us are extraordinary. We will invest in things we wouldn't have considered investing in previously. We will buy gift presents to people that perhaps we would never have considered before. We're thinking harder as consumers about smart decisions. And that again steers much more to brands needing to think strategically about what is authentic and true to their long-term marketing strategies, and less tactically about, holy crap, what stunt can I pull in the holidays to make me more exciting for the next 3 weeks? That is bad advertising and bad marketing. The push is always to make sure that we're considering things in the long term.
I love that. I love that idea of it's optimism coupled with people just wanting to do nice things and to be kinder to their friends and family as well. One thing that the report really makes clear is that AV content is still number one. And Dallas, I think you said, TV ads have, just by hair, but have overtaken general online reviews as the consumer's second most trusted source. That's a really big deal. Let's talk a little bit about the audience, as it's clear from everything you guys have said that the streaming audience is not just a completely different audience than linear. Yes, Connie, you have the Gen Z that's a bit, that are the cord cutters, but there's also a big blend in that audience as well. So can you start by telling us more about this audience?
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, it's everyone. So we know that the majority of Americans are streamers, as Dallas mentioned earlier. So that's about 86% across generations. And the majority own a smart TV, and the ability to stream is actually number one when looking for a feature if you are looking to buy a new TV. So the audience really is all of us. There are segments within, as mentioned before, with millennials and Gen Z leading the pack in some of these trends. But really across generations, you see that everyone's a streamer, and a third of across generations have also found new brands through streaming, have found direct-to-consumer brands as well, and that's led a bit more by the millennials and the Gen Zers as well there too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the thing that still always surprises me is my mother is now a streamer, and I still can't get over that.
And discovering new products and new brands.
Right, exactly. And Dallas, we now know, everybody is streaming. Oh, do you see behavioral differences in the audiences on Roku?
It's one of the great things about being a platform of our size, being the largest platform for streaming in the United States, is we represent the United States consumer. I mean, we reach households with 130 plus million people. So there really isn't, the Roku consumer is the American consumer in the US today. They represent straight across the board, with the age, demographics, income, regions that you want to reach to. So that's a great benefit for retailers and marketers looking to reach the consumers. You can really cut it anyway across our platform. A couple of interesting things that we see is there is an appetite, as I mentioned, for advertising supported content. We have this, this may sound a little surprising to some folks, but we launched a channel guide like you would usually see on your old cable, where you can scroll through, and the amount of content that is watched on that still surprises me, because you think you intuitively assume people know what they're going to come for to watch. But when you think about your own viewing habits, you'll recognize you probably spend 7 to 10 minutes thinking about what you're going to watch when you're looking on television. And sometimes you just want to sit down and scroll through that channel guide and pick out something that's an old favorite or a new classic or a brand new show, from one of our Roku originals. So that's a really interesting behavioral shift that we see here, that consumers aren't just coming in and going straight to their content. They're looking for content to be recommended to them. We've got a whole show called Roku Recommends that was launched purely to recommend content for folks. And that's a great brand opportunity. Walmart was one of our key initial sponsors to have an authentic buy-in show where we're bringing you content. So it really is a diverse and very fluid time. But I think the real takeaway is what Connie mentioned, that is streaming is mainstream, and the average streamer is the average shopper today.
Fantastic. And that's really interesting. I never really thought about the time that you spend in the TV guide when actually you are paused on a video. I'd be curious to know if there's any particular types of video. I know that I tend to park myself on a particular genre as I'm clicking through.
I'll tell you, we actually we saw a lot of interesting insights into the pausing. So we actually have an ad unit called Own the Pause. So when someone pauses the screen, you can actually buy that ad placement, because if you think about it, it's a billboard in the house that was kind of unused space. And that's one of the benefits of being a technology platform, that we have the ability to innovate and think and grow and think differently about the ad units.
Nice. And that is the perfect segue into our next discussion point, which is consumers interacting with AV content. It's different in the streaming space. I think you said earlier, like half the people pause to shop and a third of the people interact with the ads and other features. Now, these sorts of things used to only be available in the digital space on a computer and mobile. So it's great to think about this on the big screen, what is, effectively the largest screen in the house. Toby, I'd like to start with you. How has this affected how you and your team think about AV content as you're developing at Forsman and Bodenfors?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, a couple of things are important, and we talk about them all the time. One is just never to forget that ultimately we are trying to engage with human beings, and human beings' behaviors and preferences can shift and adjust in short and midterm timeframes. But in the long term, the trends are kind of common. We all want to browse, we all want to take a look at things and make smart choices. And so that drives a conversation that's really almost always about, what is the primary AV asset? What is the primary top of the funnel, top of the pyramid asset that we want to create? And then secondarily, how do we make it valuable in as many different engagements and interactions and formats as possible? There's a kind of, if you rewind a couple decades, you used to have this thing called B-roll, right? And in the B-roll, you would always find the interesting, engaging, quirky, useful stuff. And you would find the ability to tell stories in different ways that appealed to different audiences, but very few audiences ever got to see it. Right now, we have the ability to create and generate just almost an infinite amount of additional fun, engaging, storytelling stuff out of that primary asset, because it still is about a great piece of storytelling, a great idea, and finding the places and the right formats and models in which to deploy it. I think that's this notion of the pause screen, the pause unit. I mean, that is fascinating, because you could then get to the point of almost complete dynamic tailoring and making sure that what you see, Deirdre, when you're scrolling through your murder mystery or something, and what my kids are seeing is going to be different. And that's like gold dust for marketers. It's like literally the right message to the right people at the right time. And that isn't advertising, that's marketing, and it's great marketing thinking. So staying ahead of that and understand, what's new can sometimes be old and what's old can sometimes be new. But just remember that at the end of the day, we're all, as marketers, trying to have a conversation with a human being.
Absolutely. And number one, I hope your kids are not watching murder mysteries. But number two, I do love that concept of the pause screen, because we used to think about telling stories within audiovisual. And now you have this ability for a pause to actually have additional to that story. It's really cool.
Yeah, and you can go wild. You can go wild with that, right? Even extending. There's a lot of interesting dialogue to have around what you're doing. What is your behavior when you pause?
Exactly.
Are you shopping, or are you nipping upstairs to get a beer from the fridge, or are you talking to your partner about what you're going to order for dinner? If you're going to be doing that, where do you go? Like I can see 27 ways from Sunday to make that an interesting discussion for any of our brand partners.
Completely. And before we continue to riff on ideas, Dallas, I'd love to know, what are some examples of really good work you guys have seen on your platform?
Well, I mean, I love everything Toby just said, because it's exactly what, when we talk about leaning in and going beyond the 30-second ad and thinking differently about these times, that is so fun that we're able to do. I mean, to have the creative palette that you can bring to television, but the data and insights of a digital or social and search buy married into one spot, that's why I call it a renaissance in advertising. It's really the best of both worlds. So I'll give two examples of things I love, because I think Toby mentioned storytelling, and the ability to tell stories in a way that are engaging and authentic. We've never had so many opportunities before. So Roku launched our brand studio specifically to help advertisers think about how to go beyond the 30-second ad. And one of my favorite developments of that was an actual TV show starring Randall Park, who's a great comedian, if you know Randall, sponsored by Maker's Mark. And it's Randall interviewing in his living room with, each show has 2 or 3 of his friends who've come over. He has a 5 to 10 minute conversation with each of them about funny things in life that's happening. You just feel like you're part of this club of people. But each show It almost has like a Mr. Rogers moment where he would put his sweater and hang it on the wall. Randall makes a cocktail with Maker's Mark, a different one, talking about what he's making, and then sits down and has a friend over and they have a conversation. Talk about a great ad placement where you feel like the ad is just, the brand is just part of the storytelling that's happening in a rich and authentic way. So that's one that I love. I'll give a second one pretty quickly. That just talks about how you engage with that, the consumer who wants to engage with that screen. We worked with TurboTax around the NCAA, and this is another fun thing that streaming lets you do. You don't have to advertise on the big moments, whether it's the Super Bowl or the Final Four or the Olympics, to be capturing the attention of those who are wanting to watch that. So we launched a hub for the Final Four on Roku, sponsored by TurboTax, because the Final Four were right during tax season, so it was key for TurboTax to be top of mind. That had a whole bunch of messaging, but one of the cool features was it had a VR capability with your phone where you could actually play basketball and shoot the ball from your phone onto the screen and make points. It just engaged the user in a different way. It also got you to pick up your phone if you didn't have it already, and maybe you might take an action now that that phone's in your hand. But those are some of the different ways you can think about how to use this great medium we now have in streaming.
I love those examples. And I really love that last example of actually, we never used to want consumers to have phones in their hands while they were watching their AV content, but now actually we do, because it just gives us so much more capability. And it's not just about the creative ideas, but you can also target in so many more ways with AV content in the streaming space. Can you tell us more, Dallas, about what we can do with targeting on Roku? Yes, you can target with customer data, but maybe also with signals or context or any other ways of targeting.
Yeah, I think the big questions we get asked today, especially in the age of streaming, is from brands who say, "Well, I don't want to duplicate my audience. I don't want to just take the person who's getting bombarded by untargeted linear ads and layer on some more streaming ads." So one key thing that we're able to do is guarantee unduplicated reach. We can guarantee you'll reach an audience here that maybe your previous linear TV flights haven't reached. So that's a big capability that we're able to deliver that's important. But as we're talking about the fact that so many people now, 4 out of 10, are regularly having this in their hand while watching the TV screen, and 1 in 2 are actually shifting over to this capability, our ability to get a little in the weeds, but the cross-device connections, because we have that first-party data of that TV in the household that's an opted-in user, we're then able to your ad campaign can follow them to their mobile phone and make sure that when they're going to research your product, you're still with them and you're taking them along that purchasing funnel journey that really is the gold dust, to use Toby's term, from a marketer's perspective, to be able to know, and then to be able to close the loop with attribution. One of my favorite partnerships we launched this last year was with Kroger, the United States' largest grocery retailer, where you can actually, with the Kroger data program that we have, you can close the loop and advertisers can see if their ads actually drove purchase in the store. So that's the real difference. Again, I hate to keep going back for it, but that full funnel capability of the beauty of the TV streaming ads, but all the data richness and targeting capabilities of search and social and performance advertising in one spot.
That is actually really beautiful, because we used to have to think about the two things as separate. And I think that there's a false divide between the concept of brand and the concept of performance. And you've kind of given great examples there. Sometimes I think we run the risk when we can target, oftentimes I think there is the risk that we over-target. Connie, I'd love to hear from you about, does the research tell us anything about how receptive consumers are to targeting?
Yeah, actually, we found through the research that consumers want to be targeted. So that's something that, we as marketers should all keep in mind, is that, so the data shows that about 50% of millennials, they directly stated in the research that they are interested in seeing customized ads based off of their own likes, what they like, what their interests are. So they're saying, yes, I want to be targeted. And then 54%, they're interested in actually sending coupon codes directly to themselves. We've seen as well all the interaction, all of that data as well, how consumers interact with these ads online. So at the end of the day, consumers would rather be targeted than not.
That's great news. And Toby, with all of this information, it feels like media thinking needs to be a part of creative development. How does Forsman and Bodenfors look at AV now with the concept of targeting, as well as these new tools, as you said, gold dust, as you said earlier, in terms of what you can use creatively?
Look, I think it's such a great observation. And I think the truth is that great creative ideas are inseparable from great media thinking, and they all get strengthened as a result. If you can, to use the phrase, if you can put the genie back in the bottle, and obviously sort of agency models and structures have evolved a little bit beyond this. But the truth is that partnership is critical. A great idea needs to live, and a great idea can live in more places if media thinking, PR thinking, influencer thinking is actually all connected together as a part of a creative process. There's in fact, we're obviously this whole conversation's about streaming and behaviors and that whole space. There's a great piece of work, and I'll give credit actually to, this goes against some of my better judgment, but they absolutely deserve it. I'll give credit to one of the great WPP media businesses, Wavemaker, which worked with us in Canada, with F&B in Canada, on a piece of work that was created for our client, Trojan, part of Church and Dwight, that was created solely for streaming channels. And it was a 48-minute sequence of rolling credits. And then there's other behaviors that consumers get up to while they're streaming. And not to mention any other platforms, but this was very platform agnostic. But the idea literally came from a marriage and an open conversation between the creative shop and the media shop. And when those barriers drop, wherever we come from, whatever side of that genie in the bottle divide we sit, that honestly is still when some of the most magical creative thinking can happen. The genie will never go back in the bottle structurally, but from a client perspective and from a true integration perspective, that really is, the more brains you can have around a challenge and a brief, the more I guess the better the result and the happier we are.
I couldn't agree more. I found that also, speaking from the media side, the more access we have with the creatives and the more we can work together, not only are the placements better, but oftentimes the idea evolves into something that, as you've put before, Toby, is unique to that particular placement. And it really only can be brought together when you have that true understanding. I'd love to, Dallas, you said something earlier about Final Four and TurboTax. I love that example. And I would love to dig a little bit more into live sport on streaming. That's sort of, that's an area where when you think live sport, you think live and you think linear TV. So I'd love to hear about the streaming behaviors when it comes to in the sporting area.
Sure. I think, sports were kind of the last holdout that linear television companies held up saying, we'll be okay forever. We've got live sports. And then came along things like Hulu and YouTube TV and others that allow you to get all your streaming channels and all your live sports in one place, or the NFL ticket and other things that you can sign up for. So what we saw this last year, looking at major events like the World Series and the Final Four, was a significant double-digit increase in the percentage of households that watched those sporting events via their linear television this year versus those who watch, and it was a completely inverse increased double digits of those who chose to stream it. So what you're finding, not surprising, since 1 in 3 households have cut the cord, according to the Harris survey, that a lot of folks, they're not giving up their sports. They've just found new and better ways to stream and find them. And I think, you said even your parents are streaming. I think one of my favorite data points from this is the streaming cuts across every age group. We surveyed up to the age of, I think, 90. But when we look at the boomers, baby boomers, 90% of those who've cut the cord said they love their decision and they're never going back. So these we're seeing as like the era of the cord burner, right? They're not just cutting the cord, they're cutting it, burning it, and they're never going back. But they're not giving up sports. They're not giving up news. We had, I think, 20 million people watch our platform for news around the election, for example, free live streaming news. They were able to come get it from some of the apps and the news channels. They're discovering this wealth of both free content that's available to them that lets them go deeper, but also the ability to, access whatever you want on your time frame and not be beholden to somebody else's package or buying 140 channels you don't want. So live sports are going to be just fine. They'll be here for many years to come, and they're going to be streamed.
Well, I'm going to admit I was one of your viewers from a news standpoint during the election cycle. Now, everything shows us that shopping for the holiday season is starting earlier and earlier and earlier. But we still have in November Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, and Cyber Monday. Do you have any research around how many people intend to shop in that area? If you had it sort of before different areas, but not necessarily on a particular weekend. I'd love to dig a little deeper in that because that's a massive weekend for us.
Yeah, I loved a couple data points. Millennials will do most of their shopping on those 2 days. Like 50% or more of their shopping happens on those 2 days. But overall, we expect to see 2/3 of all shoppers do some online shopping, either on Cyber Monday or Black Friday. And about 4 in 10, I believe the number is 43%, plan to go in a store. Again, that number is renormalizing from, or that's not, but we'll call it normalizing, normalizing from the significant decrease last year. But for that, so I think we're going to see a robust Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But I think what you're seeing is more of that shopping pushing earlier out of those concerns we talked about earlier of stockouts, shipping delays, and other issues that are COVID related that people are concerned about. But I think still very robust. 2/3 of shoppers, about 2/3 of shoppers will do some form of online, some form of Black Friday or Cyber Monday shopping. And local, you mentioned local. Local's huge. So we're seeing a big uptick in those who plan to shop local, plan to buy local. So thinking about whether you're a small, medium business or what your localized strategy is going to be key this holiday season.
Thank you. That's interesting. And that's great news about the return to the store and the online, because Toby and I are actually working on an article about this blended shopping experience, how it's no longer online to offline or offline to online. It's actually a blended experience across the two. So with the holiday season upon us, well, according to all the research, we're already late for it. I'd love to finish with your parting thoughts for the audience. Toby, why don't we start with you?
I think I'll probably reprise something I said, which is this sort of overwhelming requirement that people think beyond tactics, right? It's always tempting to jump on, a seasonal trip or a bit of a bandwagon, a trend, but it's almost always, it's impossible to get it right, impossible to guarantee the outcome. Whereas the right things to do for marketers, we believe, through holiday season is to continue being consistent, but also to push and stretch wherever we can in order to maximize the opportunities that we see through this season based on the behaviors, the trends, the dynamics, but in view of what is right and authentic to the brand. Brands get this wrong when they go wild because it's the holiday season. They get it right when they're true and consistent to the ideas that make their businesses and their brand special.
Great advice. Connie, over to you.
I think we all know that our lives and the way that we view and the way that we shop, these things have all fundamentally changed. But also, I think it's important to see how things are developing as well. So to look towards the future and really capitalize on some of these things that we're seeing that, 10 years ago, it was, again, still a debate, right? So it's really exciting to see how we're moving forward and also how that data is really going to change and shift over time as well.
Thanks, Connie. And Dallas, parting thoughts from you?
I think first, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus and there will be presents under the tree this year. That's the first thing, for marketers. It's going to be okay. It's potentially on track to be a record holiday season, which is really exciting for those who are leaning in. I agree with everything that Toby said. And I think that, what I love about the holiday time is it's a moment to crystallize We're looking at the tactical components, but those are really the foundation of a new strategy that's being formed that tells you you need to buy TV the way consumers are watching TV. You need to think differently about how you engage them. This is not a scary time. This is an amazing time with data and the ability to unlock your creative teams. I mean, I have to believe Toby's team is literally like almost giddy with the options and opportunities they have today to think differently and creative. You want to have a VR overlay? You can have a VR overlay. You want a TV show? We can do a branded TV show. You want to drive an immediate purchase intent? We can do all those things with great creative. So, I just think there's probably never been a more exciting time to be in the brand marketing advertising space than we have now. And for those marketers, and we're seeing them really lean in, who are grabbing a hold of that. This is not just a moment in time for the holiday season. This is the new way going forward that we're going to see for years out.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you all so much for your wisdom and your time and insight here. For our audience members, we're going to be following up with a copy of the season of streaming for each of you, as well as a preview briefing of Stagwell's holiday report cards led by myself and Toby. We're also going to have a recording of today's session posted to YouTube shortly. So don't forget to follow Stagwell on LinkedIn and Twitter to catch the latest from all of our experts every day. Connie, Dallas, Toby, thank you so much. Hi, hi, my friend.
Sorry, he's
And
just come
thanks
to
to
say
everyone.
goodbye.
Make sure he knows parents are supposed to spend $254 on their children this holiday.
Dallas, don't tell him.
Dallas.
Enough, time to go. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
so much.
everyone, for joining
Bye.
us.
Bye.
Bye.